This is One on One. We're pleased to be joined by Dr. Anne Klaeysen, the leader at New York Society for Ethical Culture over on 64th Street and Central Park West. Good to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You know, a few years ago, I was over at your place and for an important discussion that was taking place. Important discussions take place there.
Yes, they do.
Describe it for folks who may not know it.
Yeah, well, the New York Society for Ethical Culture was founded by Felix Adler in 1876. And he was only 24 at the time. And I always say that because we had this image of him as being this, this old guy, kind of, austere. And yet he was, a youngster comparatively. And he was supposed to take his father's place as rabbi at Temple Emmanuel. But when he came back from his studies in Germany, he said, I'm thinking about things a little differently now. He gave his sermon at Temple Emmanuel talking about how, religion isn't really doing what it should do. We should be outside. We should be in the marketplace. We should be standing next to the working person. Why are we inside? And so the trustee said, well, you're brilliant and you have a great future ahead of you, but not with us. Right. So he taught for a while at Cornell University, which was just starting. And then he finally came back here and in 1876 started ethical culture as a non-theistic religion of ethics. And what he meant by that is we have so many battles, so much disagreements over what we believe and what we don't believe, and why don't we settle on how we behave? Let's put ethics at the center of our lives. So when you came into our building, you might have noticed that in the lobby there's a saying, deed above creed.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, for those who use the word ethics and morals in the same sentence, you say?
Yeah, I think there is a distinction. Here's a distinction I make, and that is that I think that morality, morals are sort of something that you might be taught in your family, growing up in your community. It's sort of something.
For me, it was in CCD class.
Oh, me too. I grew up Catholic, yeah. Yeah, but I think it's sort of those things that that you learn, from childhood, and you grow into a family, into a tribe, into a community. Ethics, I think, has a more universal aspect to it. It's something that we sort of come to in terms of, how do we get along on a bigger level, on a group to group. Whereas
what responsibility do we have to each
What
other?
responsibility do we have?
What I'm curious about is, particularly now with your organization,
Yeah.
particularly in the times we live in, I'm not going to get political, but I will do this.
Okay.
I will ask you, is your organization even more important today, given the presidency and how the president has shaped the presidency over the last couple of years?
I think it is, and we certainly are feeling it a lot because we have members who don't talk to family members, who are estranged from friends because of this. And so
meaning
that
either you're for them or against them,
yes,
with
exactly.
them or not.
With them
and so
or not.
therefore
Right,
we can't even talk.
And we talk about how, ethics starts with a choice to attribute worth and dignity to everyone. And so we are in this environment now where we're not attributing worth and dignity. We're not speaking respectfully to one another.
A lot of demonizing.
Exactly, and marginalizing and othering. So the challenge for us is to I talk about getting back to basics. What did Felix Adler talk about when he started this? And how do we, in a very real way, attribute that worth and dignity even when we disagree with someone? How do we find that common ground of ethics? And it's a real challenge. It's a challenge to attribute to somebody like Donald Trump worth and dignity when we see him behaving so abominably. Yeah.
So when he said in Charlottesville, I'm connecting it to ethics.
Yeah.
There are good people on both sides. You thought?
There are good people on both sides, but their behavior is not demonstrating that goodness.
From a, quote, ethical point of view?
Yeah, from an ethical point of view. In other words, I strive to understand people who can behave in that way because I'm thinking, in other words, I think about having radical empathy. I want to understand what it is to be in someone else's situation. We've heard of the golden rule, right? Act so as, well, let me backtrack. The golden rule, do unto others as we'd have them do unto us. And I see that as kind of passive-aggressive in a way, because I don't know what's best for you until we've had a conversation. So what we say is act in ways to bring out the goodness in the other. And when we do that, we bring out the goodness in ourselves. And Adler worded that in different ways. Sometimes it's bringing out the best or the excellence, but it engages in a relationship. I don't know what's best for you until we have a conversation.
Yeah, but with the rise in anti-Semitism, what is it? Is it our job to understand why someone's anti-Semitic or to simply condemn it?
Yeah, well, I think certainly it has to be condemned. The behavior must be condemned.
First, before we try to understand. Why do I need to, devil's advocate?
Yeah, sure.
Why do I need to understand white nationalism, neo-Nazism, anti-Semitism? Why can't I just say, that's wrong, ethically, morally, from a human point of view? What is the value in me understanding where you're coming from?
I agree with you that we must condemn the behavior. Here's where I think about it. We're all human beings. And so if I condemn the human being, then I'm not attributing that worth and dignity. And
you said the deed, though. Excuse me, when you walk into...
Oh, absolutely. The deed above creed. So I can condemn the behavior and the deed, but I can never lose sight that this is another human being. I can never lose sight of that.
What do we owe that human being?
We owe that human being, well, listening and disagreeing and standing up for what's right. It's a challenge. It's not easy. It's having faith in human beings, even when that faith is sorely challenged.
Your organization is also very involved in issues involving gun violence.
We are, yeah. And again, it's about how can we be safe and protect one another, and how can we be reasonable about this? What we're looking, I mean, you've seen the memes out there. There are children who are heroes. Why are we requiring of our children to be heroes and dying for that?
Yeah.
There's something so wrong about that. Last August, we hosted at the Society March for Our Lives. These are the young people from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School, and they spent their summer going across the country, encouraging people to register to vote, and they had those difficult conversations with people to say, who wanted, guns and were against gun control, and these young people had learned how to be in dialogue with people who disagreed with them. I was so impressed. They came to our society. I met with them and we had an afternoon together, and then they had an evening event in our auditorium. And what I admired about them was that they were learning how to have those difficult conversations, that they were right in their position, and they were encountering people who disagreed with them, and they somehow were able to get to the point where there was some agreement, where there was some, at least, understanding of the other person.
I'm always fascinated by people, I'm sure I'm guilty of this as well. If we are convinced of our rightness, that we are just right, and we think it's a matter of either life or death or some moral imperative, that our job is to convince the other person of our rightness. That's not always possible.
Well, and we're seeing that that's very difficult to do, because I think righteous indignation is such a strong passion for people. And so, but what we're learning in terms of communication is that if we present facts and reasoning with people, we're not going to change their minds. But there is something about really listening to the human and saying, I'm hearing that there's something here that you're wanting to tell me. And I know that we're disagreeing, but I'm wondering about that.
Boy, is that hard work.
It is very, very hard work.
You're, I don't want to bring Billy Joel into this. Billy Joel, Angry Young Man? Check out the lyrics.
Okay, I will. I will.
He just talked about being an angry person. He goes to his grave as an angry old man.
Well, but you know what? There's something to be said for anger, because sometimes that can help to clarify our values. We can feel that anger and then decide how to act on it. And too many people react rather than respond.
That is what you and your organization does every day. Dr. Anne Klaeysen, New York Society for Ethical Culture, up Central Park West, over 64th Street in Central Park West. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Well done.
My pleasure.
Stay with us. No, don't go yet. We'll keep talking.
Oh, we'll keep talking. Oh, yeah.
Right back after this.
Okay.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 30 years of broadcast excellence. This special edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato is brought to you from the Tisch WNET studios at Lincoln Center. Funding has been provided by the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, Holy Name Medical Center, the Turl Fund, supporting Right from the Start NJ, Valley Bank, Seton Hall University, the Fidelco Group, And by Summit Medical Group, promotional support provided by New Jersey Globe. And by ROINJ, informing and connecting businesses in New Jersey. Transportation provided by Airbrook Limousine, serving the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area.